Yes, sir. Gill House in the building. Yes, sir. Ready Rock is in the building. Yes, sir. Big Ben. What's up, man? What up?
Welcome, friends. Thank you for joining the first virtual table by Phans for Racial Equity. My name is Charmaine, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about the goal of Phans for Racial Equity, or PHRE, before we begin the webcast. PHRE strives to make our scene, our collective happy place, a more welcoming space for people of all races and ethnicities, bearing in mind the many ways in which race and ethnicity intersect with gender, sexual orientation, disability, and other identities. Tonight, we would like to introduce you to the Food Empowerment Project. We hope you find the discussion interesting and illuminating. If you are able to make a donation to the Food Empowerment Project, you may do so by using the WaterWheel link in the description. There are also links to find out more about both PHRE and the Food Empowerment Project. Happy belated Thanksgiving, and enjoy the discussion.
Hi friends, my name is Rupa Mitra, and I'm a member of Phans for Racial Equity, or PHRE. I'm relatively new to Phish, having seen my first show in 2011, but it has changed my life and I want very much to give back. After I read an article in 2017 about whiteness and racial inclusivity in the Phish scene, I reached out to Adam, the author, and I've been working with PHRE ever since. PHRE seeks to make the Phish and jam band scene more inclusive and more of a force for racial equity in the larger community. I'm really proud of the work that we've done, but there's obviously still so much more to do. Please consider joining our Facebook group at Phans for Racial Equity, where you can learn more about how to get involved. We'd love to have you on board.
Hi, my name is Adam with Phans for Racial Equity, or PHRE. I've been to about 85 Phish shows, mostly in 3.0. And I've been thinking a lot lately about what's been happening across the country, and I'm pretty frustrated and angry right now. And at PHRE, we really try to reach folks through their love of Phish to have a conversation about race. And if we think just, for example, about the contrast of how we might go to a festival when we could still do that and have cops on horseback just making sure we're all safe, and think about how Black folks are being policed right now and the consequences that are being visited upon those communities. I think that provides us with a responsibility actually to take some of that privilege that we have and channel it into action. So we're at PHRE working not just to make our scene more inclusive and welcoming for fans of all colors and ethnicities, but also to generate action in the broader community from Phish fans.
Hi, I'm Malcolm Howard from Phans for Racial Equity. I'd like to take this opportunity to find common ground with everybody. In that vein, I hope you're enjoying the artist, and I hope you can contribute. And if you're looking for more information on social justice and racial equity issues, please go to our website, phansforracialequity.com, or you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Be well.
Hi, all. My name is Emily Tarquin from Louisville, Kentucky, and I am a member of Phans for Racial Equity, or PHRE, PHRE. And I would like to welcome you to our virtual table discussion. Tonight we have two members from PHRE who will discuss food insecurity and how it interacts with social justice with the founder and president of the Food Empowerment Project, Lauren Ornelas. We will also share a video of a vegan recipe and learn more about their incredible work in animal activism. Please do not forget to donate to the WaterWheel Foundation through phish.com to support the Food Empowerment Project. And our virtual table will conclude with a rebroadcast of the national anthem by Natalie Cressman from PHRE's retreat this past spring, and will of course be followed by Phish. If you would like more information on PHRE and the Food Empowerment Project, we have links on our YouTube page, and also feel free to find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Now on to our discussion with Lauren Ornelas and PHRE members Dawn Moore and Malcolm Howard.
Thank you, Emily. And before I turn it over to Dawn, Lauren, one question I wanted to ask, and we kind of had some time to chat, and just wanted to get your thoughts on Phish. I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures of some of the very bushy men with big bushy beard in our community. And I'd be interested in to see what space character, or better to put, Star Wars character you would think they look like. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we'll have Dawn ask some questions.
I'm thinking the Luke Skywalker from the more recent ones. Gosh, I'm more of a Star Trekkie, I admit, but I know the more recent ones with Rogue One's my favorite, so he's not in that one, but I'm thinking Luke Skywalker as he's older. Definitely not the child.
All right, so I'm going to have Dawn give you her opinion before she asks some questions, because it's a term we were trying to get you to say, and it was we thought we would be able to pull it off. No, you weren't supposed to know. So
Okay.
it can be an affectionate term in our community. Sometimes it's used derogatory, and it shouldn't be, because we all have friends that have big beards and long hair, and they're some of our closest friends. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dawn, and I'll let her say the word.
Thank you, Malcolm. Leave it to me. It is an affectionate term that we use. And the term is wook or wookie. So that's where Malcolm was trying to lead you. But there was a good try, Malcolm. I think I won the bet. So with that, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time. I had the pleasure of watching your TED Talk recently, and I understand you developed a passion for where your food comes from at quite an early age. And it was a very interesting story that really resonated with me. But please tell us how, from that this evolved into food empowerment for you, and how you got involved specifically with the food empowerment project.
Well, I started Food Empowerment Project in 2007, and I did it as a way to kind of connect animal rights issues and human rights issues. As the Hispanics, as a brown woman, it was really, being involved in the animal rights movement was a very white-dominated community. And I felt like, I believed I've been arrested numerous times for non-human animals, and I did everything I could for them, but there was always a part of me that didn't quite fit in. And I realized it because I was kind of forced to leave a part of me behind. And so I started Food Empowerment Project as a way to say, look, I was raised without having a lot of money. So going vegan for me wasn't exactly easy. I was raised with an understanding of what farm workers go through. So I can't just say, my food is cruelty-free if I know farm workers aren't being treated well. So I realized I had to start an organization that really looked at how all of these issues are really connected. And so that's how I started Food Empowerment Project, to really say, look, if I'm vegan for non-human animals, and because I want to cause the least suffering possible, I have to acknowledge that my food is still coming from some form of suffering at the hands of human beings who are out there picking my food. So I want to make sure I advocate for human animals and non-human animals. And then I wanted to look further and say, okay, well, not everybody has access to fresh fruit and fresh vegetables, and that's an injustice inherently. Plus it would help the animals if, everybody had access to fresh and healthy food. So why don't I work all of this together? And, again, as you all know, we also work on trying to get people not to buy chocolate from slavery and child labor. And again, it's part of this system where we can inherently say, I do not want to support injustices to the cows or the goats whose milk may be used for the candy bars, but I certainly don't want to support child labor and slavery. So making sure that as I call, you eat your ethics, that I'm not eating anything I don't believe in, and also making sure that I speak out against those injustices to try to make systemic change.
Thank you. Your passion comes through in your website, I would say. It's and the progression is amazing to me, and definitely motivating for our community. So another question we have, as we mentioned before, one of our initiatives for PHRE, which is Phans for Racial Equity, is to identify and engage with organizations who are raising awareness, like yourself, providing pathways to food empowerment in communities. So in addition to raising awareness, for the Food Empowerment Project, which we're starting here, what would you say would be another way as an organization we can further engage with your organization?
Well, I think, first of all, thank you for trying to help us get the word out about the work that we're doing. I think that there's always things that individuals can do that can help promote our work, but more importantly, try to help create change. So when you're looking at things like the lack of access to healthy foods, which, many people don't experience maybe who are watching this. And so understanding the reality, I feel like COVID-19 has been horrific. One of the things I think that maybe a lot of people have experienced is going to the grocery store and not being able to find what they want, right? They go in, all of a sudden they can't. And really put in perspective of people who live their lives this way. People who end up going to the liquor stores and convenience stores to buy all their food. And the fact that they can't always get fresh fruits and fresh vegetables. And so ways that we feel that everybody can kind of participate in helping change that dynamic is really fight for living wages. And that means living wages for the city, the state, Walmart workers, fast food workers, restaurant workers, because we need to create equity. In order for everybody, we don't want food prices going down. Farm workers are already not being paid well. They're suffering from wage theft and other consequences. So we'd rather have some equity created, pay people what they need to be paid in order to live healthy, happy, thriving lives. And so one of the ways we can ensure that this problem goes away, there's a lot of issues here, not just that it's very complicated, but one of the ways is to try to have everybody and create some equity by having living wages. We also have a campaign against a grocery store chain called Safeway. It also goes under the name Albertsons, where they literally put restrictive deeds on their former properties, primarily in Black and brown communities, where they prevent new grocery stores from moving in. So in one of the communities we're working in California, they had a grocery store in downtown where there were some senior living facilities, predominantly Black and Latinx community members living there. When they left that community, they left a few miles away, and they put what's called a restrictive deed on their former property, preventing any grocery store from moving in for 15 years, depriving that community from healthy foods. And this is happening all over the United States. It's happening in Washington, D.C. It's happening in Washington State. So we have a petition on our website. We just need to really start talking about these issues as, we need to flex our power and help demand change to help others live better lives.
Thank you. I definitely think it is a time that there's a lot of us that are privileged to be able to go to a grocery store and get whatever we want. And probably for the first time in many people's lives, that hasn't been the case, right, during COVID. And so there's that experience that maybe people can relate to and realize that there's people that have that experience every day, all the time. And hopefully we'll make, bring some awareness there. I'd like to ask you a follow-up question, and I'm curious about this. How would you define food insecurity? And I know we hear the words a lot, food desert as well. I know that's a popular term, but maybe not the most accurate term. So what are some other terms that you would, that you use more often or would help us define these?
Yeah, we tend to use the word food apartheid because we think you need to be honest about that this is deliberate. This is deliberately trying to impact the health of Black, brown, and indigenous communities. And it's not just the United States, it happens globally, which predominantly the immigrant or indigenous communities who are impacted. But here in the United States, it's predominantly Black, brown, and indigenous communities whose health is being deliberately impacted because of who it is that they are and the color of their skin. And so we feel like food apartheid's a more correct term. And I'm gonna add a little bit here as well in terms of when the work that we've done when we're going to these, when we're working in these communities with the communities, is we're seeing things that are actually healthy for them not being provided. So obviously fresh fruits and vegetables are good to have a better life, better health, even according to the American Dietetic Association. But you also have things like plant-based milks not being available in these communities. What you have are animal-based milks being available. And for someone like me who's a Hispanic, which means I'm native to the Americas, Columbus brought cows over on the 4th voyage, right? So my ancestors were not exactly consuming cow milk until colonization. So oftentimes what happens is that I would say for Black and brown people, of course, Black people who were forced onto these lands, and again, like my people, forced to assimilate to the European diet, that we don't digest cow's milk. You know, we're called lactose intolerant, but a problem with that term is it puts the onus on us as if there's something wrong with us for not being able to digest a colonized food. Instead of what we like to call it is lactose normal, right? One, who drinks the milk of another species? And two, it's not natural for us or our ancestry. So when you go into these communities and what you have primarily available is animal-based milk and not plant-based milks, who some people around the world, that plant-based milk is what they've always had. That is deliberately impacting the health of that community. That is deliberately impacting making people go to school with stomach aches, go to work not feeling good, and just not feeling good because you're not providing them the food that's actually better for their health. So we feel like food apartheid when you take Safeway into consideration, when you take, you know, the plant-based milks, all these issues into consideration. This is a deliberate attempt to impact our health.
Absolutely. And you know, taking this one step further, and what close to our hearts is, what are the implications there then for social injustice as well?
You know, that's the whole thing is so connected, right? You have people who are what's called time poor and cash poor, right? It's people who, even if they had access to the healthy foods, they may not have the time to cook it. One, they can't afford it. In order to be able to access it, they're going to have to take a couple buses in order to get somewhere to get the healthy food. And you have that many people who are, you know, I feel like COVID, as we all know, kind of really shined a light on the inequalities in this country. And I think it really has done it as well, where you have people who are already suffering health consequences, such as living in areas where there are toxic facilities because of environmental racism, where their health is already not good. And it's predominantly Black and brown people who are also considered our essential workers during all of this, who are forced to work. So you have a lot of issues that are going on that you can't exactly do a blood test and tell, right? You have the fact that they're dealing with threats of deportation from their jobs, fear of even leaving their houses because of deportation, you know, racism, discrimination in all of their lives that is already draining their body of, I should say, draining their immune systems. So you have it added on that they can't access healthy foods and they're in fear of not having a roof over their heads. So all of this stuff is completely interrelated. And it goes back to how we treat people and how we pay people, and if we treat them with the dignity that they deserve or not.
Absolutely. Before I turn it back over to Malcolm, I have one more follow-up question for you on that. So with the pandemic raging, we're not quite, I mean, there's good news on the vaccine front, but still we're far from there and everyone being safe. How do we make the vulnerable food secure right now? What are your thoughts on that? What can we do more immediately right now?
It's a really, really good and important question. You know, it's one of those things, right? I'm very concerned about Band-Aid approaches, right? That food banks get more support than people who are actually trying to change the systems in which force people to rely on something like a food bank. So really getting those urban gardens going so people can grow their own food, getting worker-owned cooperatives so the money is staying in the community and not going off to where the corporate headquarters is. But at this situation is like, we need to do both, right? We need to make sure that we're still supporting those changes that need to happen so that people aren't reliant upon food banks. And then at the same time, make sure that right now that people are getting the food they need. We've done food drives for farm workers. That's a lot what we did at the beginning of COVID, was making sure the farm workers were fed, which is ironic because they're feeding all of us. But making sure that they get fed, but also making sure that we have some information on our website, that making sure that you're not donating to make yourself feel good, but you're donating food that's actually going to help somebody.
Wow, that's some powerful stuff. And one, thank you, Dawn, for those questions. One thing I will say, Dawn and I have known each other for a long time, and the town that we grew up in was the typical have no idea that anything else is happening outside of it. And as we moved away and became, I guess, more cosmopolitan in our travels, but settled in large metro areas, I settled in Newark, New Jersey, and lived firsthand what you had said up until about the last 3 years ago. They finally broke this grocery store code here, because what would happen would be, you know, from the 70s and 80s, there were old IGAs and other properties, but there were deeds and covenants on it on what it could become. And that really disadvantages being a brown person to begin with. You start to think about that, and you're looking around and you're walking and you're saying, hey, why is it $20 for a bag of rice at the bodega, but it's $8 if you have a car? So the hood tax is real, so to speak, right? And it was very scary. So one, I'd like to thank you for that. And then one follow-up question I had on some of the items that you had said: how does organized labor play into this? Because in a past life, I used to do union negotiations for the Teamster food employers in California, as a matter of fact, or the UFCW stop and shops. How do they play, and what can they do to move us to the point where we have food security? So we're not saying insecurity. I mean, food's been used as a tool since man's been on the earth. So how do we get there?
Well, I think, what's really exciting is, in my opinion, working with unions, because I feel like they have so much power and so much influence. And we were lucky recently to get the North Bay Labor Council, which represents a lot of unions up here in Northern California, to support our campaign on Safeway. And we're hoping to get the UFCW support anyway, because in fact, what's happening when these restrictive deeds, and I'm sorry that you experienced that, but when these restrictive deeds go into place, they also have a community that's now void of good union jobs. And that's just as important to making sure that everybody's taken care of. And so the thing with food that makes it complicated is that it's complicated. There's a whole long chain, and we care about the person who picks it, to the truck driver who drives it, to the grocery store worker, to the fast food worker. We care about all of them. But what's the beauty about it too is that really everybody can make a difference. For everybody who has the privilege of eating several times a day, every single time we eat, we have the ability to create change. And I think that it's recognizing the power that we have and working together and not putting up barriers. And, as someone who runs a vegan organization who's doing this work on farm worker justice and access issues, we've been incredibly lucky that nobody said to us, you're a vegan group, we don't have any interest in working with you. That they understand, that they're seeing beyond this, and they see the connections there and how we can work together. And I will say the credit to you all as well. I mean, you all, as fans of a band, are looking past just the fact that you're fans of a band and realizing how your concerted power can help create change. And that is unbelievably beautiful and inspiring, because you can do that, and we need more people to be thinking that way.
Well, one, thank you for that compliment. And I think our community as a whole does a lot around that. And so it's good to hear an outside perspective on that.
Yeah, and the band too. I mean, how many bands make sure that they're giving back too? I mean, it's not like something that they're like, okay, now everybody's doing it, we better do it. They've been doing it for a long time. And so that's what makes me like music. It's people who care, like that's what I care about. I'm very political, so that comes along with it.
Well, one, we love the amazing work. And you just hit on something that we were talking about, and wanted to kind of get your take on this, because we constantly hear the term, instead of food insecurity, we hear the term food desert. And it seems that may not be the right way to explain food insecurity, because while that definitely explains access to food, there's a whole bunch of different things. So it seems to us a little bit like the difference between people who used to say global warming and climate change. One may be a symptom of the other, but one explains the situation, one just gives a symptom. So can you help us kind of understand those two terms?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is more that like food insecurity is just not knowing where you're going to get your food. And food deserts is more, if you look at the USDA term, it's more about proximity and how far are you from a particular grocery store, and the cost. And for us, we look at it, is the food even culturally appropriate? And again, not reliant upon typical corporations to be where we get our food. The corporations haven't really looked out for everybody. So, you know, we'd rather people be reliant on each other and community and figure out other ways in which we can get healthy and fresh foods.
And, you know, we just finished Thanksgiving and everybody's probably gorged themselves and no one really thought too much about food insecurity. You know, as we approach 2021 and, you know, regardless of what's going on, we have a president-elect. What would you like the president-elect to put on for policy changes to help address the situation? Because it seems like local governments and state governments, and to certain degrees, have tried. I don't know how hard they've tried, but they've tried. But it seems like this really needs to be a national approach, because otherwise it's left to the devices of 50 disparate organizations in the states.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very pro looking local and community based because I feel like we have more power there. You know, I can easily set up a meeting with my city council member easier than I probably will my congressional representative. And so I always feel like the power is in local. But I think that what happens is that we have a lot of, and hopefully this is not going to always be this way, but a lot of that goes looking towards, and I don't mean to say it again, but they look towards corporations as being the solution. So they look at, oh, I have a problem with access to healthy foods here. Well, let's bring Walmart in. Well, Walmart isn't paying living wages right now. So is Walmart really going to help that situation? Walmart also places restrictive deeds. Is that going to help the community if they decide they're not making enough money and they need to walk away? What about empowering the community and making sure these empty lots can be turned into urban gardens, or helping support worker-owned cooperatives, because the money's going to stay in the community and the local policymakers should want that in their community, where all the money that's being made isn't going back to Arkansas with the Walmart family, that instead it's staying in Oakland or Detroit or wherever else it needs to be, so that that community can actually, you know, keep their family living there.
Wow, powerful stuff. I'm going to turn this over to Dawn to ask a few more questions, and then I'll close it out. But thank you very much for explaining that, because if I was in a quandary about it, and I've been doing some research, I can only imagine what most are. So thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a journey, just, you know, continuing to learn, and definitely learning from you. I've been, as I said, looking at the website for Food Empowerment Project, and I encourage others to do that too. There's a lot of information there, but it's really well organized, and I think there's a lot that, you know, it's a good place to start to learn and educate yourself. I would ask you, of all the initiatives that Food Empowerment Project is working on right now, what is one that you would or engage with? What is one that you would like to tell us about tonight that really helps our community kind of get a better feel for the Food Empowerment Project, and further encourage them to go to your website and learn more as well?
Well, it's hard because, like, I love all of our campaign work, and since I came up with the ideas for all of it, it's like trying to get me to choose my favorite cat or something. It's really hard. But I would say that it's how we try to connect these issues, and, you know, and how we're not willing to say that we're only going to work at where the issues intersect, that we want to look at each issue and each problem and figure out the ways that we can solve them when they aren't intersecting and when they are intersecting. And so I think more than anything is that we really try to give people tools to make a change. If you want to eat your ethics, if you want to be more informed about your food choices, we really try to give you tools to help you do that. We try to give you ideas of, you know, coffee makers who can care about the environment and the people and the animals, chocolate companies who care about the workers and well, I should say care, but who don't source from slavery and child labor and don't have animal products in it. You know, if you're interested in going vegan, you know, we have vegan Mexican food in English and in Spanish, vegan Filipino food in English and Tagalog. We're coming out with vegan Lao food. So, you know, we're an organization full of a diverse community. And so our organization's website represents that in terms of how we want to talk to you about veganism, how we want to talk about farm worker justice. We do a school supply drive for the children of farm workers every year. You want to see the children of farm workers with smiles on their faces, excited just because they got a backpack. You'll see that there.
Definitely. As somebody who is continuing to learn and to be better, you know, just incorporate everything I learn and be better each day, I would say your website was very helpful. So thank you for that. Are there any overarching messages then that you would like our community to walk away with today after watching this interview?
Well, I think, you know, as always, there's a lot to think about, right? And you're here because you care. And you're willing to do the discomfortable thing by learning about something that may make you feel hopefully not defensive, but hopefully a little bit thinking, being introspective a little bit. And just to remind yourself just to not feel overwhelmed by it, and instead look at it as an opportunity to help create change. And that change being within you and how you individually can help the world be a better place, but also how we can use our collective voices and demand change, not only for ourselves and our local community, but also globally, because that's what's going to create long-lasting change, is us working and fighting together for justice.
That's fantastic. I completely agree. I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, for us being able to learn more about the Food Empowerment Project. I encourage everyone, as I said, to look at your website, and then also to donate to the Food Empowerment Project through WaterWheel with us. We look forward to engaging with you in the future. As I said earlier, this is a start, not just a one step. It's a start of something that we hope to continue to work with you and hopefully even one day get you to a Phish show with us.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'll have my Food Empowerment Project shirt on, maybe.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. And for everybody that's watching, we're going to now show a clip of a wonderful recipe and provided to us by the Food Empowerment Project. So stay tuned and get your pots and pans out. Thank you, everybody. And Lauren, thank you again.
Thank
Emily,
you all
Dawn,
so much.
see you on the other side.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Chef Evangelina and welcome to my home. I'm so thankful that we have been allowed this platform to carry on with our Vallejo Healthy Food Fest, thanks to Food Empowerment. So we've been going through a lot of different things with the COVID crisis, the shelter in place, and yet having fun. So, also, not getting a haircut for 8 months. So anyway, we're just gonna bear with everything and just enjoy. So let's get this recipe started. Well, I wanted to share a little bit about the history of the dish which we're going to make. The name is chiles en nogadas, which means chilies, or these poblanos, in a walnut cream sauce. The commander of Mexico, a military commander named Agustin de Iturbide. Okay, so back in 1821, he signed a Treaty of Cordoba. I mean, it was actually the treaty to give Mexico the independence from Spain. So it was, people were just so happy. Well, he was headed back to Mexico City, and he stopped in Puebla, Mexico, and that is where this dish was created, in Puebla, Mexico. The nuns from the Santa Monica convent had wanted to make something very, very special that represented the flag of Mexico, and it was red and green and white, which comes from the nut cream sauce. And so I was introduced to this dish back in I don't know what year it was, but it was, I was not vegan at the time, and I had read the book With Water for Chocolate, and it was so neat to me because I've always loved to cook. And so it just showed the lady the star of the book, her passion for food and for cooking. I decided to make the dish vegan a couple, 3 years ago. And I've only been vegan for about 5 years, and it's just changed my life. I'm so excited about that. I was in a wheelchair for 20 years, on and off. I wasn't paralyzed. I had an injury to my back, but because of pain and different things, I had to use a wheelchair, and I not looked back once. I thought, I've eaten enough steak to last a lifetime. So I was happy. And I still remain happy, and I enjoy making new recipes of things I used to have. So I know that we're going to enjoy today. I've decided to do a little mixture of mushrooms, because I think mushrooms taste a lot like that, especially portobello's, a lot like that, combined with nuts. And then it also includes a lot of different fruits. The dish is amazingly filled with different flavors that pop in your mouth. So I think it's going to be exciting for you. It is a little bit more labor intensive because it's a celebration dish that you might make, twice a year. Sometimes when I take shortcuts, we can do it more than that. But it is labor intensive, but I think you'll enjoy it, and you'll have a dish that you'll love forever. One of the great things that you can do, what I like to do is I like to break it down. And so in this recipe, we have the sauce, we have the chilies, and we have the stuffing. If you have a gas stove, fantastic. It's great because you get an even char, because we're going to char these. But if you don't have, and you can use your oven, I'm going to show you both ways. Isn't that neat? Oh, the smell is just, it's wonderful. You can see here that the chile has gotten completely charred. It's all blackened all the way around, even those little nooks and crannies, because it's direct heat. And you can place it in a bag. The reason for this is so that it gets steamed and it loosens the skin, and it's easier to take that char off. You hear that? That means they're blistering. I love that sound. All of them done. Now here, after oven roasting or charring, because you do the broiler, you can see that it's also all black. The chilies are less firm, but you put them in a tea towel that has been moistened with water, and cover them also for about 15-20 minutes. Even 30 is great, but it will loosen that skin. You need to be careful as you're pulling off the char, because you don't want to peel away the meat of the chile. It's you want to keep the chile as intact as you possibly can. And it's a little more difficult when you have to peel them this way. After you've peeled them, you're going to put your gloves on, probably during the whole process, and de-seed them. There's also little veins in there that you will find. It's better to take them off. You won't have as much heat coming from the chile. Excuse me. They are much softer and more cooked because they've been steamed in the oven, of course. Now, here is the charred, direct char, and I'm using the back of a knife, and you can see how it easily comes off. You don't have to try to peel it. You just gently can do this back and forth motion, and that comes off quite easily. Some people, after they've taken off the skin, they will run it under the faucet to clean all those little bits and pieces. I don't recommend that because it takes also some of the flavor away from the chile, and you want to get that beautiful flavor. And if you're sensitive to heat, it also will take the heat away. So maybe you'd like to do that. But I just rub it with a little paper towel, little cloth to get those charred bits off. And as you're cutting through it, make sure that you are doing it gently so you don't go all the way to the other side. But you can slice it and also do the same thing, de-seeding it. This dish is so beautiful. I love it. This time of the year, in September, of course, in Mexico, they are celebrating the 16th of September, which is their freedom, their independence. And they use all these beautiful seasonal dishes. I think the nuns that I spoke of in the story that I gave at the very beginning, they went out and looked for all the freshest fruit. And so during this time, it's just beautiful to note that you can make this, especially that celebration, because the fruits and vegetables, they're seasonal and they're fresh. And I think that makes it always exciting to me when I'm making the dish, because I know I'm getting fresh ingredients. And you can see here, taking out all the seeds is very, very important. And you can see also the difference, the contrast between the oven roasted and or charred, broiled, and the other direct flame. This one is much softer, and if you like that chili more cooked, this is the way to go. So we've just finished doing the chilies, and we're getting back to our walnut sauce. So here we have the walnuts in the milk, and we are probably going to use a little bit of milk in case you want to save some back, so I don't want to just throw it away. But I have a little sieve here, and empty this out. And we have our sour cream. I'm going to put these nuts in here, and I have the date as well that's in there. It's softened. I'm going to put a little sour cream, and normally it calls for sweet cream, or in Mexico we have a crema fresca. And this is pretty noisy. If you have a Vitamix, it does tend to make it a lot smoother, but if you don't and you have a blender, just let it run longer, because you just want to make sure that it's a nice creamy sauce. So I finished that noisy job, and I'm going to put that in a container. So one of the things that I think is real important to do to have a nice and calm way of cooking is to get everything in its place. That means when you look at your recipe, you say it has chopped parsley, chopped spinach, chopped pecans, all of these things that it has. You want to try to get those done before and have them in their place. It's called mise en place. One of the things also about this recipe that I learned, which was really nice, it was that they use cactus and they cure it. I think it's candied. However, it's very difficult to even get, even in Mexico, because it's on the endangered species. It's actually one of those round cactus, and bisnaga, I think it's called. I hope that was right, but bisnaga. And so I was trying to think of something I could possibly use that might have that flavor, that texture. I was thinking of cactus, and then what could be used. So, but it's sweet. But it has, you know, when you sweeten different things like a cactus, it has a thick kind of a feel, and then it's very sweet. Here I have my peaches. And this is a recipe that has so many flavors. Talk about a party in your mouth. It has so many flavors because we have, and you can change some of the things if you don't like. Sometimes they use pears. I'm using, I think the more traditional thing is a peach, a pear, and an apple. But there was one time I made it, I did not have any peaches, but I had some nectarines, and I kind of thought that was even better. But you don't want your fruit to be too soft, because you're going to be cooking it with, and it will get mushy, so you don't want that to happen. I have peeled, because of this, the way the skin of the peach and the pear are, I peeled both of those. But the apple, I think, has a beautiful, beautiful color, and it adds to that. It adds to the color of the whole dish. So, and you don't also want to make these too small, because then you will definitely, they will definitely go to mush. My main point is get your stuff together, and then have them in these little containers, or in a plate separate, however you want to do it. And then it's much easier. You don't have to be dashing, oh, now I have to chop this, now I have to chop that. Get it all done and have it ready for you. So when you cook, you don't have to be running around. So we're going to start with our filling. Well, not start, we're going to continue with our filling. And I have all the things I need out here. Like I said, the mise en place, or everything in its place. You want to have your pan nice and hot, and I would suggest, of course, the best way to do this, and so that you're not frustrated, is to have a good nonstick pan. So I have just gotten this nice and hot, and I'm just about 2 tablespoons of water. Let that bubble. Then we're going to add our onions. Now, I am allergic to the raw onion, and I eat that. So for me, this is a lot of onions. Normally I would use a planer, a microplane, but I wanted to do it this way. I love the taste of onions, but they have to be what I call dead, really dead. So you see me, I just put this all in. And the hardest part for me about water frying is patience, because I want to look at them and I want to do my little thing, but what you need to do is just let them sit there. They're going to start browning on the edges, but the only way they're going to brown is if you let them set. So you saw me put the water, I poured the onions in, and then you just let it set until you start seeing some little browning on the edges. And when you see the browning on the edges, you know it's time to turn them. Okay, so you see it's been a few minutes, and you can see that they're starting to brown. And you may ask, why do you want them to brown? Because there's flavor in the brown. Now you can turn them over and you can see how they have actually browned. That's caramelization. And now what I'm going to do is do this again. And you can see that it's pretty dry now. So I'm going to add a little bit more water. Soften it on again. There's cooking and browning. Beautiful. When I put the onions in, I didn't put the garlic in because garlic tends to burn a little more. So what I'm going to do is now add the garlic. Now, I haven't used oil on this, but I am going to use oil now, a little bit, and some butter. These are teaspoons. So I'm just adding 1 teaspoon there because I'm going to add, I'm going to bring the fire down a little bit because it's pretty high. So you see all these mushrooms, and mushrooms are wonderful. Add a little more water. I'm going to add a bay leaf to this, and that's going to remain throughout the whole cooking process. And you can just, I can smell it already. I like to throw a bay leaf in my rice when I'm making it, and just gives that, you can smell it all over the house. 1 teaspoon of oil. That gives the mushrooms, because mushrooms tend to be, they can get mushy. And right now, with all that steam, you want to just crisp them up a little bit. And we're just going to let that water evaporate. So the water has evaporated quite a bit, so we are now just letting it toast on there. But I am going to start adding a few more things. One thing that I love that is not in the recipe, but one of the things that helps give meatier taste, fuller taste, is to me is bell peppers. So we're putting, this is actually 1 whole bell pepper. And mix that up. Just put layer after layer after layer. Now, you notice normally when chefs are cooking, they talk a lot about layering salt. And so every time you add something else, you add a little bit of salt, which is why things in a restaurant can be very, very salty. And you do not need that much salt. I'm going to add the parsley. Looking so beautiful. Since they're going in there together, I chopped the walnuts and the pecans together. You can always just put them in, like I said before, in a food processor or chop them by hand. But I'm gonna add that now. So you noticed I've done more of the vegetable nuts, the harder things that, and if you see that it's getting a little dry, then what you want to do is not use more oil or butter, but use water. And that's just a little bit of a sprinkle. And you'll notice I haven't used any salt, no seasonings. Every one of these things has so much flavor. And so we want the vegetables and the fruits to sing to us. And sometimes when we use too many spices, even though I'm not saying it's bad, but first you want to see all the music that comes from here, that is being sung in the pan with just the vegetable. One thing that I am going to do, because we're using mushrooms, is this is a tablespoon of low sodium tamari. And you can use, and I'm not even using that much. That might have been 2 teaspoons. But If you prefer using liquid aminos, that's also good. My family doesn't care for that, so I'm just using the tamari, low sodium tamari. And I'm missing my hubby. He's usually with me when I do presentations, but he's very busy today, and so he's not with me. But here we've got basically the deep portion, the luscious kind of umami flavor, that flavor that is comforting. Now I'm going to take some of the dried fruits because it doesn't matter. The apples, the pears, the peaches, those can tend to get mushy if we add them too soon. This also calls for, the traditional recipe calls for raisins. And raisins don't do too much for me. So instead of raisins, but you can use them, I don't want to offend anyone who loves raisins, but I like these cranberries, and they are sweetened with apple juice. So, but this is what I like, so that's what I'm going to use. And that's the nice thing about this dish, and so many, when you're cooking, sometimes if you don't mind that it's not exact, add something you like. Like the next thing I'm going to add is, now the traditional is something called, and I'm not sure if I did it in another segment, but it's called biznaga, and it's a cactus. Nowadays, the cactus, this barrel cactus, the round one, is it's on the endangered list. So you can't even get it in Mexico anymore. So it's very hard to find. I think they said some underground companies do it, but we don't want to use anything that's on the endangered list. So what I did, I love dried apricots. And so I'm going to be using these. It has that candied, the sweet taste that I imagine when you make this cactus, you have to sweeten it and dehydrate it. So that's why I'm using the apricots. Also, if you don't want to use, or if you don't want to use the raisins, there's the green raisins that I think are wonderful. So I'm going to sprinkle a few in there. I was just going to show them to you, but kind of tempting, so I just put them in there. And then we're going to add the apples. That was one apple. The peach. If you don't have a peach, I have used nectarine, which is just as fantastic, and sometimes I think even better. This is sounding a little bit like it's needing moisture. Just add that a little bit. Now we add our tomatoes, which have some nice liquid in them. I'm going to keep the pan moisturized too. Is that the word for culinary moisturized? Okay. Maybe not. I am really enjoying the smells, looking at the different textures. I want to add a little bit of the blanched almonds that have been chopped. And now we come to the seasoning. Now, just like this, there are so many flavors in here. With that bay leaf all over. I don't want to put the fire up too high. Now I'm going to add a little bit of Mexican oregano. It's a little bit much coarser, of course, than the regular oregano. When I say a pinch, I get two fingers and my thumb. And this one, kind of work it through, and then I do this. Roll it around in your, between your palms. Oh, smells wonderful. Try the pepper. Also, scraping the same way I pinch it. Maybe 2 pinches. And the cinnamon, I'm putting my tiny spoon here. This is about a pinch, but I like to do it in this little teeny spoon. About 1/4 of a teaspoon. Maybe an 1/8. On the recipe it's correct, so. Oh. This is almost smelling like Christmas too. With that little bit of cinnamon. So here's what it's looking like with all those wonderful ingredients. So we're now at the best part, and that's the stuffing. So you can see our chilies here have been patiently waiting. I'm going to take this one, open it up, and stuff it. Helps to have it open just a little bit. You can press, if you can see that. People aren't going to see that little bits and pieces that you might have left on the outside because it's going to be covered in this beautiful white sauce. This chili is much bigger. Sometimes it helps to set it down instead of just. So I think you can see this. And to serve, I've got one of my plates from my childhood that I love. And reminds me always about my mom, my dad, who now passed. But put down just a little bit of cream sauce here. And put this chili on top of it. And the tradition is to cover it. Oh, the smells that are coming from this are amazing. It's that sweet and savory. And then all of a sudden you smell that. Just get a hint of that cinnamon. So don't go crazy with the cinnamon. And I would even double that recipe if you're going to make more than just 1 or 2. And then you get your, I think those are so beautiful. Okay, and we want it to look like that flag. We can put a little bit around here of that parsley. Even add a few of the almonds. Make that plate look festive. And of course, add more of these. Now, doesn't that look like a celebration? Now I get to taste it. I didn't do a lot of the filling. The poblano is not hot, but that filling is, along with the cream, like I said, it's a party in your mouth. There's so many things. The little pomegranate seeds burst. I get the sweet and the savory. And If you didn't tell me it was mushrooms inside, I wouldn't know. Everything blends together so well. Yum. It's a celebration. So I want to thank you today for taking your time to watch this demonstration. I am Chef Evangelina from All in All Vegan, and just wishing you the best in the kitchen, and I hope that you enjoy this recipe as much as we do at home.
Thank you for tuning into our discussion, and happy belated Thanksgiving. Please make sure to check out the links in the description, and don't forget to donate to WaterWheel. Stay tuned for the national anthem with Natalie Cressman.